a lot of the places that this would really fit in don't have a lot of that IT infrastructure, don't have,
That's right.
It kind
Don't
of
need
serves it serves its purpose is my point.
Yeah.
And again, kind of like what we reviewed during a lot of these, when you find your lane and you have well-defined
process.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. When an ERP system uses a specific buzzword or something that customers might relate to, it's typically the marketing hype, but not really the strength of the product. For example, several cloud products might include a cloud word even if they might be legacy products, just to prey on uninformed customers. But there is one system that really lives to its name called Infor Visual, that has similar visual capabilities, an organization that is rare to find in smaller software packages. Also, most of these smaller packages targeted for job shops typically exploit the broken processes of the customers. Infor Visual is surprisingly an exception there as well. But is Infor Visual a fit for every business out there? In today's episode, we invited a panel of industry experts for a live discussion on LinkedIn to conduct an independent review of Infor Visual's capabilities. We covered many grounds, including its unique capabilities and where it's likely to be the strongest fit. Finally, we discussed the challenges with its roadmap and why the product is likely to be sunset soon. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution independently. For today, we have a very interesting solution. It's called Infor Visual, and the people who have been in the Infor ecosystem or they have touched Infor ecosystem in any capacity, they know that how much Infor Visual users love Infor Visual, but not everybody. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. It's going to be a fit, it's not going to be a fit. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. I've been doing ERP for roughly 20 years now. So on that note, I am going to start with Dave for his intro.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Chrysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with leaders in the manufacturing space to help them create systems to free them to drive growth throughout their business. And I come to you with more than 20 years of operational management experience and leadership experience. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you so much for being here, Dave. Andy, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for inviting me. My name is Andy Pratico. I have been involved with ERP software for small to mid-sized manufacturers for the last 41 years. I am in British Columbia, Canada, but I lived in the US for 11 years, and I've worked with manufacturers all over North America. And I also have a published book that teaches people how to investigate and how to evaluate ERP software. And thank you again for having me to attend, Sam.
Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And if you are in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys send your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them during the show. If you run out of time, our panelists are going to make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, I am going to start with the quick briefing and a refresher of the different sessions that we have done. And Dave, Andy, remind me, I believe we have done at least 4 or 5 related to Infor. So we have done Infor corporate strategy. That's where we covered the overarching view of Infor. And then we have also done Infor CSI, which is the sideline product. We have done Infor M3. We have done Infor SXE product, which is the distribution product. And then we have done Infor LN as well. So this is probably
That
the
is
sixth one.
correct. That is correct.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for the validation, Andy. So overarching Infor strategy, Infor, just like your Appicore, Apteam, they are very purpose-built centric organization, the way they approach their corporate strategy, the way their go-to-market strategy is. And how they like to define purpose-built is going to be, they have many different products. Not all the vendors that are going to be sort of purpose-built, they have the same strategy. But in the case of Infor, they have many different products, and each of those products are very unique the way they work, and they are going to be targeted for very specific industries. That is not to say that their products are not going to have overlap. In fact, there is significant overlap across the products, and that's probably the reason why some products are not going to have as bright future, especially when we talk about re-architecting for the cloud and making sure that the products are going to have some sort of commitment from Infor Corporate. And again, Infor has, Andy, I believe, 200 products they have acquired over the period of time. And obviously, they cannot, none of the companies can really carry those many products. So they are going to be sunset at one point of time. It's just a matter of time when these products are going to be sunset. So Infor Visual is very similar product as your SAP Business One or Microsoft GP. Overall, from the size perspective, the way the size is of the product, not from the capabilities perspective. Capabilities perspective, it might be slightly different. Infor Visual is going to have far deeper capabilities overall from the manufacturing perspective. SAP Business One and Microsoft GP, the reason why I am trying to compare with these products is because they don't have the same backing from the Microsoft or SAP corporate. Right now, we don't have clear understanding whether they are ever going to be re-architected for the cloud. That's why I am trying to compare that they are probably on similar trajectory. The challenge with most of these companies is always going to be the existing install base. If the existing install base moves faster from these products, then they can kill these products, far easily. But for the most part, most of these products have significant commitment on the on-prem world. Most of these products are either going to be sold on-prem or they are going to be sold on some sort of either ported cloud or fake cloud or whatever cloud. So Infor Visual is the similar story, that it does not have clear direction overall from the cloud perspective. Now, when we are going to compare this in the Infor portfolio, Infor Visual is probably one of the smaller products compared to other leading products that have clear direction on the cloud, which is going to be your LN, M3, SXE, and that's going to be your Sightline, as well as S3. So those 5 have very clear strategy in the cloud suite world. Infor Visual does not have that. Infor Visual is one of the smaller one, but there are other smaller products in the Infor portfolio. Infor and its partners, they are still trying to commercialize and sell the majority of those products. In fact, they are still selling Infor Visual. Not just to the existing customers, they are also selling to newer customers. So again, I think the direction is not as clear where this product is going to go. But overall, we still have significant install base at this point of time, and excitement, at least from the customer community. So I am going to pause there for briefing. Did I not cover anything that we typically cover for the briefing, Dave, Andy?
I think you covered it pretty well, Sam. I think another point of comparing Visual to those other products you were describing is more from a technology standpoint. Visual certainly is much stronger when it comes to manufacturing functionality, but it may be behind the curve a little bit regarding technology, just like GP and the SAP Business One systems are.
Yeah, great point. And we are going to be touching on some of the features where the product came from, what is the strength. A lot of people talk about different strength from the visual perspective, but there's no sort of clear consensus in terms of where visual fits. In fact, visual actually had two different products. That I personally didn't know. I came to know when I was reviewing the demos and some of the collateral. And visual had one product for job shop. There was another one for ERP. ERP one was for bigger product overall. Job shop did not have as much functionality. Typically, when we speak to anybody in the visual community, they all are going to say that visual works really well in the custom manufacturing space. Engineer to order is what they are going to say. But I have seen visual installed all over the place.
Yep.
Be it your distribution, architecture firms, you name it. I mean, it's just all over the place in my mind.
You've seen them with any company with a pulse.
Exactly.
Which of course is not the way to do it. But
Yep.
just to comment on the two different systems, Sam, I saw your PowerPoint. The Visual Job Shop system was developed by the same authors as Visual ERP, and they were both purchased by Infor back in 2004. But the Visual Job Shop system isn't supported any further.
Okay, that's a great point and great addition. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so mainly I think we are talking about visual ERP. So basically, if you are looking for visual job shop, if you still have that somehow, obviously now you know that it's probably not going to be supported. So what you are really looking for is the visual ERP. So here's a little bit history about how visual ERP system evolved. So it was started in somewhere in 1992. Initial release of visual manufacturing by Lilly Software Associates 1993. And then 1994 through 2004, and in 2004, Infor acquired. It used to be called Visual Manufacturing. They renamed it to Visual ERP. And Visual Job Shop was released in 2003. So I don't know what they were trying to do, because obviously Infor has way too many products right now. They had a lot of products for Job Shop as well. And then in 2003, they tried to launch one more product, which is fascinating for me. So obviously that didn't go anywhere, I guess. And now they are trying to consolidate all of that.
The Visual Job Shop system was meant to be a competitor to some of the smaller job shop systems out there, like JobBoss and E2. It didn't have accounting. It was designed for small, targeted at small, like under 50 employee machine shop job shops. And it didn't get a lot of traction. It certainly does have some loyalty, but like I said, I don't think it's being supported any further.
Okay, thank you so much for that information, Andy. So moving right along, so in 2004, Infor really acquired. From 2005 to present. Obviously, Infor has done a lot of development, but not as much as I would like to see. For example, let's say if you look at Epicor, if you look at the cloud development of Epicor Kinetic, in last 2-3 years, Epicor has really killed it with their products. So if they can do it in 2-3 years, if the corporate is really committed to a product, it should not take more than 5 years to re-architect the product on cloud. And that we have seen with many different product lines within 5 years. For example, Acumatica, within 5 years, last 5-7 years, they are now one of the most popular. They didn't exist in 2015, I guess. Sure, they are going to say that they started in 2008, but nobody knew about them. So within 5-7 years, they became really popular and big, and a serious stakeholder in the ERP community. So some of the unique features, and I'm always looking for those unique layers and the psychology, how the product was really built. And one of the things that I have noticed in this particular product, I know a lot of people talk about custom manufacturing. When they talk about visual, they are always going to say, hey, you know what? When you are going to have a lot of different sub-assemblies that you don't want to create a part number for, that's where your visual is going to be handy. Now, I have not seen any other ERP systems personally that allow the sub-assembly without part number. I personally can see some value why that would be a huge value add for the companies, especially if they are going to have a lot of sub-assemblies that are going to be built to order. But the way the functionality for the pseudo subassembly works is going to be, if every system treats it differently. For example, Infor Sightline, they are going to have a phantom subassembly, which is not exactly what Visual does, but it has similar functionality. So the same functionality exists in a lot of different systems. They just treat it differently. So that's going to be one factor. We are going to be digging into that at a deeper level. But overall, from the product psychology perspective, the way I was reviewing these screens, it came across as if it was really created for fabrication shop. In fact, if you look at the terminology across the screens, then you are going to be seeing a lot of fabrication term and not really manufacturing term. The other thing that you are going to notice in Visual is Visual was really designed for mechanical centric manufacturing. Okay, if it is going to be machine shop, you are probably going to struggle, with Visual, and obviously Visual data model did not advance with the machine shop. And right now, if you look at any of the manufacturing shops or manufacturing shop floors, they are all going to have some sort of CNC machines, which require separate reporting from your labor. So again, those are some of the shortcomings of the product that Infor did not really invest in developing those features that are going to be really, required right now if you look at the manufacturing companies. So we are going to dig into all of that in far more detail. But here, some of the things that you are going to notice are going to be very similar to the job shop companies. For example, when we reviewed other systems such as ECI M1, if I remember correctly, and you guys can remind me, for example, you are going to see features such as customer PO on the sales order. That is very common. When you look at companies such as electrical distributors, when you are going to be looking at companies such as any company that are working for a customer, are probably going to have a customer PO for their sales order. So but not every ERP system is going to support that. So this is where the product psychology is going to be. The other things that I noticed is going to be the number of dates that you have. Sometimes those dates could be because of the process failure, just because you need too many dates. Sometimes I have seen 5 different dates on a PO. Now, why do you need those dates? Sometimes you need those dates because your documents are not really connected with each other, and you need to keep track of your promise date, ship date, when you are going to be receiving, when you are getting a call from your vendor. You know how that goes. So whenever I see too many dates on a product, that's typically a red flag for me. We have seen a lot of dates in the Genius ERP system as well. So here, in the case of Visual, they have a lot of dates. Maybe they are being used really in the planning, or maybe not. I don't know. But typically, when I see too many dates on sales order, that's typically a red flag for me.
They are used in the planning.
Right. But I mean, how is going to be a question? So yeah, so we are going to be reviewing. So here we are talking about desired ship date. Then we have the promise ship date. Then we have the promise delivery date. And then we have the order date. So now the question is going to be, okay, what is the difference between a ship date and a delivery date? Because, essentially those two are going to be the same thing. And typically when you look at the delivery, that is going to be performed by a third party. Even if you're going to have a smaller TMS system, which is going to be your PageJet or whatever, they are typically going to be controlling the delivery date. So why do you need to have the delivery date for your planning? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But again, depending upon how you have structured your operations, typically these are the symptoms of over-engineering in my mind.
I see both sides of it coming from, imagine that coming from where I come from. And I think to Andy's point, in kind of an ideal scenario where you've gone through and you have a really solid business process in place, there could be some utilization of those fields. And from the other kind of standpoint, I had to laugh because it really reminds me, I used to tell people when I'd walk through a manufacturing operation, typically you will find something on a job docket or, sales order, work order, something highlighted, right? And well, what's the point of highlighting it if we're already not reading it and it's documented on the sales order, work order somewhere? It's kind of the same thing, if you're utilizing the dates to help you from a planning standpoint where you have not only committed, to your customer a in-hands promise date, and you are targeting an internal expedite date or ship date, something like that, to account for maybe that third party, which would potentially be covered by that third date. I mean, you could see it being utilized, but in my experience, more facilities than not don't have the process in place to back up having all these additional fields.
Yeah, and typically, Dave, from my experience, I mean, there are two or three different ways of accomplishing the same task. If you go through the same ERP process where you're going to have allocation priorities, then you probably would not need a date, right? But you could also translate that in a date and use as a date field. So again, in my mind, whenever I look for any sort of deviation, okay, if I compare 5 different ERP, why 4 of them do not have a date and this has a date? So there could be two reasons. Number one, it is trying to sort of solve the broken process problem, or there is a real need in this industry. In my mind, I have personally not seen these many dates being used in any of the ERP system or in the manufacturing. So that's typically a red flag for me. The other red flag is going to be you have the FOB and shipping at the customer order level, which I typically like to see at the line level. And this is going to speak that, okay, now when you are capturing this at that level, then you are much smaller size system, because typically your shipment detail is going to go at the line level. So that sort of speaks for the size of the system, that this is really designed for the smaller companies. The other thing that I personally like in this system, and the whole idea of visual ERP system is it's very visual, and they really live by that name, to be honest. Okay, so one of the things that if you are going to be asking any sort of procurement folks or sales folks, they like to see procurement history right on the same screen so that they can see, okay, what was the price of the previous order, and based on that, they want to make sure that they are able to provide the same price to the customer. That happens in your procurement. That also happens in the sales team. So here we have the entire history about the customer right at the customer order level, which is fascinating, to be honest. Okay, if you can provide that, so that's probably the reason why customers really like visual, based on these small tiny mini features that visual is able to provide to be able to assist the users and with their workflow. Now, the other things are going to be, for example, let's say if I look at, and this is the material planning window, and typically when you look at the material planning, this is not going to be at the drawing ID or drawing revision level. Okay, so this, again, things are getting a little mixed here. When I am looking at my drawing revision number for the planning, why am I mixing my engineering with my material planning? So I don't know which industry is probably going to be planning at the drawing ID level or drawing revision number level, which is just too granular for me. Maybe some industries do that, but so far I personally have not seen, unless you are trying to solve a broken process. The other things that I noticed in this particular system is going to be the way the material planning is going to be so intuitive. You have things such as tagging that is provided right on the same screen, where you are going to be doing your consolidated supply and demand plan. And by the way, when people talk about Infor being designed for custom manufacturing, they very, very rarely talk about how deep Infor Visual is in the supply chain planning, in the MRP planning, which is probably its strength, to be honest, that I have personally not heard anybody talk about. Okay, I absolutely loved the way the supply chain planning is done in the system, but it's very rarely spoken about that, what Visual can do. So we are going to see, okay, how it basically handles when you are talking about planning at the item level or at the plant level, whether you talk about just the material planning or the scheduling, they both are done equally well in the Visual system. The other things that are very unique that I personally have not seen, I don't know, Andy or Dave, if you have seen in any other industries. I think, there have been some sort of demand to find out the other layers as part of lot ID. But as such, I have personally not seen where that is going to be used. So here we have the lot ID, we have the split ID, sub ID, operation ID. And by the way, this is the inventory transaction entry. So you have a lot more layers. It's almost like your subdimensions of your chart of accounts that I personally have not seen in any other system where that may be used. The other things that I noticed is going to be the piece level planning and piece level data capture that you have available. And this validates our assumption that I initially mentioned, that this was probably designed for more of the metal fabrication shops or the metal shops, and that's why it has this functionality, which is going to be at the piece level. This plans at the piece level, and typically this is very hard to accomplish because this is going to be a similar functionality as you are going to find in the matrix inventory or dimensional inventory scenario. These guys also talk about dimensional inventory, but it's not the same dimensional or the matrix inventory that you are going to find in fashion, apparel, style business.
Completely different.
Their inventory is very different.
Yeah, completely different. This is completely to do with offcuts, purchasing by dimension, like you said, sheets of steel. You buy 10 sheets of steel 4x8, so your unit of measure is 4x8 sheets of steel. You use up half of one, so now you have 9 full ones in stock and a 10th one that's whatever the dimensions are that are left over. So you know exactly what to be able to use on the next job that needs one piece that size. And minimizing scrap, more or less.
Exactly, and that's going to be a very interesting point, because if you actually look at the reviews, Andy, that we have captured, they all are complaining about how poor scrap functionality is in the system. So
I read them.
So that's where I'm sort of divided. That
it's okay. It's okay.
That's where I'm sort of confused a little bit. That you are trying to position for the metal industry, and this is where my understanding is going to be that when you are going to be this in conjunction with your nesting. Nesting is where you are trying to maximize your sheet metal, and but then you are not going to be as good at the scrap handling. So we'll discuss that, but let's discuss some more things here. Now we have some more things at the lot and serial traceability perspective. Now, even when you look at the lot and serial traceability, each industry is going to have different layer and different traceability requirements. So even though you might feel that, does your ERP system perform lot or serial traceability? If it has that functionality, it should be good. No, because you are going to have many different layers, with your lot and serial traceability. So here, some of the layers that I have noticed that I have not found anywhere else. Number one is going to be, you have the batch number that goes along with your lot number. I think SAP can do that, depending upon, obviously, the larger systems might be able to do that. But even the smaller systems, they have the batch as well as lot. But typically, you don't have the second layer in a lot of different ERP systems where you are going to have the batch number as well as lot number. The lot number itself is used as a batch. It's not a different identification number. But here, you have two different numbers. You have the batch number as well as you have the lot number. And then you have the trace ID. And trace ID, which I find very useful, to be honest. If you have two layers, you are going to have a lot more control overall in your traceability. And maybe some industries really need those two layers. Otherwise, they might not have the same traceability that they might be hoping. The other things that I noticed is, for example, heat range and score code. I can almost guarantee that this is going to be a lot applicable in a lot of different fab shop. Whether we are talking about some of the glass companies, they have a lot of different variables as part of the product. Any metal companies, they are going to have a lot of different dimensional inventory as part of the product. And that's the reason why they have the heat range as well as the score code. So by looking at this, you can figure out, this was really designed for the fab shop and the metal industry.
Originally, it was going back to that comment about that visual job shop system. Originally, visual manufacturing was designed for job shops, and eventually it evolved additional functionality where it was a little bit onerous for job shops. So that's why they changed the name to Visual ERP, and they reinvented the visual job shop system for the smaller companies. But that you're right. That's what visual manufacturing originally was designed for.
Yeah, and Andy, just on that comment, I guess job shop could mean a lot of different things in my mind. So again,
machine shop, custom machine shops.
So if you look at the machine shop, I don't think visual is going to be a fit because they cannot do labor and machine reporting. So if you look at
do what? Which?
Labor and machine reporting separately, that's a drawback right now. At least on the screens, you have to do it together, and that's the limitation of some of the ERP systems that were designed for job shops. Job shops have become machine shops now, and the machine reporting has to be separate than your labor reporting. So if you go back to your Genius, Genius does not have your separate machine reporting. They are going to assume that, okay, the amount of time a person is spending on the machine, it's the same amount that his machine is running, right? What's the difference? No, because now we are living in 2022. Okay, people go to home, they are going to run the machine for 22 hours. There is going to be automated sensor. So the process is very different now. So
Yeah,
the cost
just so you know, Sam, Visual does do that. Visual can have different run times for the machine versus the labor employees.
we are going to review the screen, and we have validation from at least 3 different screens. At least I could not see that, so maybe we can
Yeah, I'll show you another
discuss that.
day.
So here we are talking about the document life cycle, and this document life cycle I really admire, because this is the very first time I have seen in the smaller ERP system, but this is not SAP. So typically you are going to find the similar document life cycle only in the case of SAP. Which
The big SAP, do you mean, Sam?
No, Andy, we have
SAP
seen this.
Business One?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So SAP Business One has far prettier and far more robust.
Sure.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm appreciating that Visual also has it, which is very evident here. But obviously, this is running using the legacy code. Even SAP Business One is running using legacy code. But at least you have the visual traceability, which is a big deal in general. The other things that you are going to notice in Visual is this is not just the document traceability that you have. You also have the status of each job. So when you are going to be looking at these color codings, where it is actually trying to tell you how much material have been consumed on a specific step, on a specific job, and how much, who's working on which job, you can see that. So all of those workflows are really easy overall in the visual system, which is not as intuitive in the other systems that I have personally seen in the manufacturing space. So I really like that about Visual.
This is it's more of a transactional traceability, and surprisingly enough, the other Infor product you're familiar with, Sightline, they've adopted that functionality in Sightline now.
Yeah, but it's really bad. If you look at
in Sightline,
yeah, it's really bad.
I haven't seen it in Sightline.
It's really bad, Andy.
Oh,
so
boy.
again, okay, so when we talk about
you know what? When the software didn't have the DNA to start with, and you try to jam things in, it's like anything, right? You end up having a good little mess.
Right. So when we look at, so for example, I always give the example of configurator. Configurator could mean 2 field on a form,
right,
on a site, or it could be a 3D configurator.
Absolutely.
So, so a lot of companies are going to claim that they have the transactional traceability. But when I look at the transactional traceability, this is where, for me, the role model always is going to be SAP, because the transactional traceability is inbuilt as part of each of the product that they do. And that is just phenomenal. Nobody does as well as SAP. This is the first time that I've seen a product that does similar to SAP, which is obviously Infor Visual, which is wonderful. Okay, so scheduling. When I look at the scheduling, a lot of people talk about how good scheduling is in Infor Visual. To be completely honest, I didn't see any difference between what I have seen here versus any other ERP systems that are going to be designed for manufacturing. For the most part, it's very similar. The only difference between visual scheduling versus the other systems that are going to be designed for manufacturing, in that the only thing is going to be that you don't require a part number that we are going to be discussing very soon for your sub-assemblies. But as such, when you are looking at, schedule, you are looking at work center-based schedule that most manufacturing ERP systems can do. You'll be able to trace and track and do the what if scenarios. All of that is possible in most of the systems that are really designed for manufacturing. So I personally don't see that as a plus for visual. There are other aspects of visual that are really strong, which nobody talks about. But scheduling is, in my mind, it's not as strong as what people claim.
You know what? You're absolutely correct, Sam, on the surface. I completely understand. I'm not sure what other screens you have, but you see what you're describing right here. Obviously, it has the same functionality as most other APS type systems. Finite, infinite, backward, forward, shifts, all that kind of jazz. But and you can do simulations, of course, by all those different, till the cows come home. But the real difference between Visual Scheduler and anybody else's is it's not just measuring on-time delivery or percentage versus the promise date. It's also measuring the profitability of the simulation. So when you're doing a simulation, you can see which simulation will give you the best on-time delivery, but at the same time, it'll also show you which ones will be best, hit the bottom line the best. So you can make your decision not just on-time delivery, but of which one's going to make you the most money.
So here's my challenge with that argument, and maybe Dave, you can help me with that. And typically, when you are looking at the profitability, that means you are layering your costing data, you are layering your freight data, as part of your scheduling. So in my
Just
mind,
to be clear, this is the throughput calculation that Ellie Goldratt invented for the theory of constraints.
right, I understand that, but I mean, for what purpose is what is going to be? I don't know. I mean, Dave, do you have any commentary there by any chance? No. Okay. So again, great point, Andy. You can look at some of the other screens here. So here, at least when I look at this one, and these are the screens taken from the demo, where it's very clearly evident that the only thing you can do is you have the start run, you have the stop job. I am not seeing machine run, and typically you are going to see a function for your machine run, and this has been
That's
validated.
under the advanced tab. You don't have that tab opened. You're on the cost tab, so what you're showing is to do with cost to do with that operation or resource. The next tab over is advanced, and it'll show you what percentage of the time you're going to need employees at that specific machine or other tooling or any other kind of concurrently scheduled resources.
Okay, but typically, I mean, when people are working and they are clocking their time, you are probably going to be seeing that up top, right?
What you're looking at here is the estimated amount of time. The actual will be captured while it's happening, right? And you'll have a variance analysis from there.
This is in the shop floor, Andy. So this must be happening on the shop floor. So this is the actual.
This is the estimate you're looking at. You're looking at the estimated time at this resource.
Okay.
Which is fine. That's part of the quote.
Okay.
But if you want to see what the advanced tab shows you for what you're describing, Sam, I can show you another time.
Yeah, we can discuss another time, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. So here are some more comments here. This is the visual job shop commentary overall. So in this particular, they are saying that Visual Job Shop did not really have a lot of different features that were really available in the Visual ERP. In most cases, that is going to be related to supply chain management. That was not really available in the Visual Job Shop. And we all know from the other discussions that we have had so far that the job shops, they don't do a very good job of the inventory management or the supply chain management. And that could have been the reason why they took out all of that functionality from Visual ERP to be able to design the Visual Job Shop.
I think you're right there.
So here, one of the things that you are not going to notice when you're looking at the manufacturers, they typically require the aftermarket support or the service. And for some manufacturing companies, this is going to be okay. But let's say if you are the OEM, typically you are also going to require the service functionality, service scheduling. That is something that I have personally not seen in the documentation in any of the demos. So that is probably going to be a drawback, that if you have any sort of warranty workflow, service order, service scheduling, Visual is probably going to fall short there. And it's really designed for that, in and out jobs where you don't really have any sort of support required once you ship the products. Okay. So here, and this is where, the observation is. So let's say if you look at the terminology, the way the product is positioned, you are going to look at, fabricated, you are going to look at consumable, and these are the terms that are really used in the fabrication shop. Then you are going to have auto issue, at the part level. Again, typically when I look at the auto issue, that's going to be at the BOM level. Here, this is at the part level. So that could be a red flag. I don't know. This one is going to have really the backflushing functionality at the line or the material level. So that could be something that you may want to dig into.
Yeah, just so you know, it does have backflushing through all the material levels, all the labor levels. So whichever time you're making a subassembly, which is common to being made before, and you only want to track it at standard, you can just do automatic backflushing at that level, both labor and material.
Okay, so now we have some of the other unique layers here where it is going to be, you have the part and site correlation on the part maintenance itself. That is very unique as well. I don't think I have seen that with any other ERP systems that we have reviewed so far. So here you are designing a part for each of the site, which is great because here you are doing sort of the multi-site planning, but you typically don't have that option right at the part, which could be good or bad depending upon how you use it or view it.
I'll tell you one of the cool things on this screen, though, Sam. While you're here, you have your arrow pointed at the fabricated checkbox. When you check both the purchased and fabricated item, so it could be either, depending upon what you're going to be doing this time. Maybe you're going to buy that subassembly. Maybe you're going to make that subassembly. The cool thing is that if you check both of those in the master file, when this demand occurs, it will ask you which you're going to do this time.
Do you want to clarify that a little bit? So let's say, okay, from the user perspective, let's say if I am checking that fabricated as well as purchased. So typically I am checking that because when my MRP is going to run, it's going to say, okay, do you want a job order or do you want a purchase order? Right?
Correct.
So in this particular case, let's say if I have both of them checked, so what is the system going to do again?
When the demand occurs, it will ask you if you're going to buy this or manufacture this time on this specific job.
Okay, so that could be a very useful feature, I guess, because then you are enabling your salespeople to mention, but then why?
It'll be your planner, not the salespeople. The planner would be the one doing that. This is just a master file you're looking at.
Okay, so very interesting piece of functionality.
How does that track back then? I'm curious, Andy. Like, where does that data then live to know
what actually happened in that job?
Yeah, so it's at the job level?
Yeah, it's got complete traceability of all the transactions of every work order, for all of history. So you know, in this example, we purchased part number 1, 2, 3, and we did not make it. But Sam was correct about the maintenance and the aftermarket service. Visual tried coming out with some functionality at one time, but it was half-baked and it never was successful.
Okay, thank you, guys. So here, some of the layers that I've seen that are very unique for me. For example, let's say the process type correlation with your item. I have personally not seen that at the inventory level. So that's, again, it could be very unique to a specific industry. And when I look at process types, typically that is going to be for the fabrication shop, because they are going to have many different processes. Typically they are going to be the combination of your chemical processes plus the mechanical processes. The industries that are going to have a little overlap of mechanical and chemical, probably this product was really designed for that. Then you have the mixing of cases with part config. Again, that's very unique that I typically don't see on the item screen. Okay, so this is where I guess the whole subassembly functionality is, which is very unique. So far, again, we are going to look at the comment from the reviewers as well to get their perspective, what they think of the product, because obviously they have lived through the product for a long time. But here, if you look at the design, the way this product is designed, here you are probably not going to require the part number for these subassemblies. Most ERP systems require the part number. You can declare them as phantom. So your planner or the planning engine is not going to use or utilize that for the planning itself, that part number. But as such, you have to create a part number. And this particular functionality could be useful in a lot of different shops. For example, let's say if you have a very custom architectural fabrication shop, and if you are going to be sign shop, print shop, typically for them, they just don't want to have like a million part number. But sometimes there's going to be a little overlap between how you're engineering the things versus how your production does things. In the case of visual, it seems to have mixed both the engineering as well as the production a lot. But again, if you are going to be very custom shop, then you probably would want this inside your ERP system.
Well, just realize what that is. That's not really a subassembly, those things you see on the right. Those are sub work orders, okay? So, and these are custom sub work orders, so they're never stocked. So they're kind of like a phantom in the fact that once they're assembled or built, it blows through, in this case, to the mill, it looks like, where the line takes you to. The welding operation. But so those are not sub-assemblies. Sub-assemblies that are put into stock would be one of the folders you see in the left-hand column. I'm colorblind, so I can't tell you what color that is, but I think it's red. If it was coming out of stock as subassembly, it would be one of those red things. These are subassemblies. These are sub work orders that are never stocked.
Okay, just to be clear, I think there is a terminology issue here. So when you talk about subassembly, do you always refer to them as the ones that are going to be in stock? Is that what you're saying, Andy?
Subassembly would be going into stock, yes, and then issued back to the job at the next level up. You see, these are issued to the main job immediately upon the completion. There's no transaction. As soon as you finish that sub 2, it immediately gets welded into the main assembly.
So this could be a very visual specific term, to be honest. From what I have seen with the other ERP system, they might have sub-assemblies, that could be in the stock or they could be built to order.
Right.
So that doesn't need to be always in stock. So when I say sub-assembly, I am using it loosely, that it is going to be a BOM that is going to be as part of your parent BOM, and then there is going to be a child work order that is going to be associated with your parent work order.
The work order, this is an engineer to order work order you're describing here, because these sub jobs are absolutely custom. So the real difference between this presentation and what you see in most every other ERP is that those sub assemblies and other systems that require part numbers are put into stock as an inventory item before they're brought to the next level in the structure. Now, what happens when you put an item or a structure, a bill of material into stock is it loses the visibility on the cost breakdown of that sub. In this case, you also sometimes lose the connectivity of the scheduling from one level to another when it goes into stock and then back to the next level up. With this one, the costing is always there. The complete breakdown of every sub is there. The scheduling is always clean. And like I said, you never ever stock what you're describing. The visual calls those legs, not sub-assemblies.
Right. And I think, again, the only value that I personally see here, and that's my perspective, okay, is going to be the requirement of that part number, to be honest. The other things that you mentioned, in my opinion, I think you can do that in the other ERP systems as well. I don't know.
Maintain the, let's think about that for a minute. When you take a sub-assembly and you put it into stock with any ERP, it rolls up to one cost number, which is called the material cost. You lose the labor cost. You can go back to the work order that built that item, but in the actual build of this structure, you've lost the cost breakdown of that subassembly. It's only one material cost. Whereas with Visual, it maintains the complete cost breakdown of labor and material throughout the entire build. That's why it's good for ETO.
Interesting. Okay, so some more comments here. And by the way, MEC, one of the things that I noticed is if they have a very strong project management functionality, which is very rare to find in the smaller manufacturing systems. So here we are talking about the WS functionality, which was very, very, very clean, that I have not found in the other manufacturing ERP systems that are going to claim that they are really strong in manufacturing. So here, even if you look at the overarching structure of WBS, which is very compelling in general.
Let me explain that a little bit. The project piece that Visual developed was designed for aerospace and defense contractors in the U.S. because they're very highly audited by the government, right? So when you have a company here in that's not an aerospace, that's not a governmentally audited organization, sometimes this module is a shotgun shooting flies, if you know what I mean. It's way too powerful. It's really designed, it's not designed for an engineer to order equipment manufacturer. It's more designed for a government contractor. Okay, just so you know. It is powerful, but it's usually too powerful.
Okay, anything else, guys? Okay, so let's look at some of the reviews. So number one thing I personally like to see is how recent is the review, because obviously there are going to be some development done on top of the product, and it's not fair to the product, if these are going to be old products. Obviously, we like to look at the profile of the person who's reviewing, what is the size of the company. So here we are looking at the machinery shop, 11 to 50 employee. And some of the comments that they have mentioned, Infor operates on proposed availability rather than actual. If a work order is late to the due date, Infor still treats the material as if it is available now, which is sort of a shocking comment in my eyes. And the reason for that is because, because Infor Visual, as we have all heard Andy speak, and a lot of people speak, that Infor Visual is really known for scheduling, but the users don't have the same feelings here. Now it could be because of the user, it could be because of the system, but I have seen,
or it could be the original implementation. As with most of these ERP systems, there's lots of different companies that sell and implement these things. They don't always have the credentials to implement it properly.
Right, but at the same time, when you see a trend in a specific review, that means that's probably real. If five people are reporting the same thing,
it depends. Yeah. It's possible, yes.
Yeah. So that's what we try to do as part of these forums, that we try to look at the trend. So here, the other things that we have noticed here is engineering changes are cumbersome, manual changes required of parts assemblies in your library. Again, this is where the visual sweet spot was. So the user is not sharing the same feeling that they are having challenges with the engineering changes. Now, there is something going on here with the ref changes or the way you are going to be carrying your inventory. I think there is a real, concern there. So make sure you are going to be taking closer review of that. Here, they are saying software for a continuous manufacturing environment. So they have recommended that this might work for the continuous manufacturing environment. And I personally don't know any ERP system that can work for continuous manufacturing environment. It's that complex.
I think he means like repetitive manufacturing is what he meant, not continuous. I don't think it's process he's talking about. He's talking about probably repetitive manufacturing, which is really the opposite of what visual designed for. But that's beside the point. Everyone has opinions.
Yeah. So here, the user is saying we have had to write multiple add-ons macros to get visual to work effectively for us, which is, a shock because, based on the way the design, these screens are designed, you would think that visual is probably going to be good. So now the second review is coming from electronic manufacturing, 51 to 200 employees, and this is the quality and manufacturing engineer. It was selected as a Y2K solution. They wanted to replace homegrown solution. Here they are saying bill of materials are facilitated by engineering master, flexible editing capability. The version control for the bombs can be detailed or vague as the process desired dictates. So that seems to be a red flag there. At times a shadow part, is necessary in the manufacturing process. So this guy is complaining about shadow part. The entire visual community.
What is a shadow part, Sam? Could you?
The shadow part is going to be a part that is going to be without part number. So here you are saying a shadow part is going to be mandatory in your manufacturing process. So if the user is complaining about that piece of functionality, there is a serious problem there.
Remember, the only time that capability is used is when the item is never stocked. So in this case, it sounds like he's trying to stock those items.
And there's something going on there. Again, review that, why that is happening. So I'm not saying that, but there could be a problem. So make sure you review that. This shadow part does not require an inventory transaction. And they are saying that it does not require an inventory transaction. And it's made as a separate process, sometimes out of sequence to the general process flow. Infor Visual version 6.3.5 does not have that capability. So
do you know what year 6.3.5 came out in? Any idea?
I don't have that, Andy.
1996. He's never upgraded, is what that's telling me.
Maybe. Yeah. But he's reviewing in 2018, so yeah.
No, he's got the same version he's had for 20 years. He's never upgraded.
Okay, some more comment here. There is no easy way to differentiate between engineering documentation and production documentation. Huge red flag. And that's what my perception was. When I look at the product, they are trying to mix too many things, engineering as well as production. That's not how ERP typically treats these things. And that's where I think, that's where the real problem is, at least with me. I don't see them to be together as part of the same system. Typically engineering goes through a very different revision process versus your production. Here, the user is saying that it was intended for mechanical manufacturing, which is right as well. That's my perception too. For electronic manufacturing process, this is not ideal. That's what the user is trying to say. So we are close to our time now. We'll review some more. So here, the user is continuing with the electronic manufacturing process control is not ideal when referencing inline or custom processes used to build product. for material control, it is excellent unless a modification to a standard product is required. And we did this on 60% of the product going out the door. The core product feature that removes material from an assembly requires the creator of the work order to calculate the percentage of cost. The removed items are from complete something something. Occasional data collisions are happening. So obviously you have data integrity issues, corrupted transactions at times. The accounting procedures in place found them by the end of month where they were corrected. The processes need a higher level of accountability and control. The processes can be formalized with workflow scripts to ensure the higher level of control. Yeah. So again, these are the consistencies that we found in the reviews. Again, pay attention to those when you are reviewing, the system. And I'm actually going to open up for the commentary that you guys might have.
Sure. I'll go first. I mean, having a comment from someone that's on version 6.5.3. I mean, I know other companies that are on that older version. And obviously, there's been upgrades and enhancements and improvements since that time. However, they're still using a 20-year-old software package, and they're still finding it acceptable. So that's kind of impressive. And the other thing that's kind of nice about Visual is kind of the opposite of what we were talking about earlier regarding web enablement and some of the newer technologies, is that 30% of the Visual customers don't even employ an IT person, a professional. So the whole advantage of being in the cloud and not requiring an IT person or a server, and Visual only needs one server. It's not such a strong selling feature with Visual. I mean, the customers that like Visual and use Visual are the ones that do want to remain on-prem. If you want a cloud solution, you're not going to investigate Visual.
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, good commentary. Interesting functionality. Some new pieces that we haven't seen before. So that was good to learn about and kind of hear Andy's takeaway on that. So yeah, for me, some interesting takeaways in terms of specific functionality for this particular product. So,
and when the software first came out, and it was 1992, it was revolutionary. I mean, it was the world's first Windows-based ERP for manufacturers. However, it's not 1992 anymore. It's 2022. And, probably around the 2010 mark, Visual wasn't getting as much R&D as a lot of other systems, and it's been surpassed regarding technology. There's no question. But functionally wise, it's got functionality that no other system includes.
And you can... To kind of your point too, Andy, about a lot of the places that that this would really fit in don't have a lot of that IT infrastructure. Don't have. That's right. It
don't need
serves, it serves its purpose. Is my point. Yeah. And again, kind of like what we reviewed during a lot of these, when you find your lane and you have well-defined process. Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean the comment about scheduling, you're right. I mean, the first pass looking at that scheduling screen, it looks like everybody else's, and that's the misnomer that everyone does when they're looking at scheduling software systems. But there's a reason why Visual actually does have customers using their scheduling system, and it's not that screen. It's the reasoning behind it. So you know exactly why you're going to be late at all times, and you know exactly what to fix at all times. So you can be proactive instead of being reactive. And, I know I'm not trying to convince anything, but like I know a customer in Detroit that has a promise on their website that uses Visual. And they promise that we will be on time or we'll pay you. And they've never been late. They've never paid a penalty. And their lead times are the shortest in their industry. So, there's some pretty cool things in that tool. Yeah. But to look at that screen at one fell swoop and see why it's different than other scheduling systems, it would take a lot longer discussion.
Right, I think the big point behind that, though, Andy, is, I mean, it still is going to come down to internal processes.
No question. No.
Yeah, the technology there is there to support those processes and the people executing. But by and large, that case study you just laid out there, I guarantee they have well-developed process.
Yes, and you know what? The reality, they say that only, we talked about statistics of people being successful with ERPs. They say that 1% of manufacturers are ever successful with the built-in APS engine in any ERP system. Now, the fact that Visual has 10% that actually do it sounds terrible, but it's actually kind of impressive.
All right, guys, so we are really close to our time right now. We can take some short comments, otherwise we need to close.
Hey, Visual's been around for a long time. It's very function rich. It has a lot of functionality. If technology is not in consideration, there was mentioned about reporting. Well, it depends on which modules that person has. Like commonly, people don't buy all the modules, and so therefore the reporting is difficult. But if technology is not an issue, if you want a system where you don't need an IT person, and it doesn't take much to maintain it for care and feeding, and especially for custom manufacturing, Visual is pretty amazing.
Dave, your assessment? No?
I kind of already summed it up. I mean, I agree with where Andy's at. It's with any of these solutions, it's really about understanding your own business model.
Staying in the lane.
Taking in your lane and, putting it up against, as you're evaluating, putting those systems up against your understanding of your model and your processes.
Okay, and my personal assessment of this product is going to be, if you are looking at the roadmap of the product, make sure you verify that from the OEM if they are really committed and if you can find the roadmap.
Or
we have not clear commitment on the product. So make sure you are paying attention to that. On that note, that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution independently. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another solution. On that note, thanks everyone for your time and insights tonight.
Thanks, Sam.
guys.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Dave Chrysler, head over to thechrysler.club. It's THECRYSLER.CLUB. If you want to learn more about Andy Pratico, head over to essoft.com. It's ESSOFT.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Brian G. Shannon, who shares his insights into the importance of centralizing shared services for large global rollouts. Also, the interview with Paul Bregel, who shares his insights into the operational challenges and quick fixes to deliver desired KPIs for a chemical company. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to get you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.